This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop early holiday deals now.
Judge Jeanine Pirro.
She's the outspoken host.
Judge Jeanine Pirro is dominating the headlines right now.
This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome, everybody, to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. It is Sunday morning, and I hope you are enjoying your day so far. I'm very excited. It's a wonderful day here in New York City, and as always, we are armed and ready to serve justice with all my great listeners here on the Red Apple Audio Network. But I am extremely excited. I'm going to the Garden tonight for that Trump rally. It should be very exciting. In fact, we are living in very exciting times. We've only got one more Sunday before the election. And, you know, there's so much that happened this week. Kamala Harris kind of came out and showed her true colors. The amazing thing is that she is now ending the campaign with Trump is a fascist. Trump is Hitler. Trump is this horrible person. And we can't have him anywhere near our country. And, you know, this fascism is something that the Democrats use every time they want to end an election in their closing argument. They use it, the fascist argument against Goldwater, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, W. Bush, and Romney, and now Trump, of course. And they're even claiming that this rally today, where there'll be about 19,000 people at the Garden, is a fascist rally. I mean, it's really ridiculous. But, you know, Kamala doesn't have much else to do. She is losing male voters, a huge gap there. And her sidekick there, Tim Walz, is not someone who's going to help her with that. He's a so-called coach, or an assistant coach, actually, who gets booed at football games. And she's doing everything she can to try to convince men that she's the candidate for them. Barack Obama coming out and criticizing black men for not voting for, not supporting Kamala Harris. Dumb move. People don't like to be talked down to. And by the way, other than living the life of a multimillionaire, what has Barack Obama done lately for anybody in the Democrat Party? And, so that's her message. Her closing message is, he is a danger to democracy. He is Hitler. Except that nobody can tell me how he acted like Hitler when he was in the White House for 4 years. Trump's closing argument is she broke it and I'm going to fix it. And it's realistic. You can judge it objectively. He's going to fix the border. He's going to make sure that there is more support for law enforcement in this country. He's going to end the inflation. He's going to end the wars. Now, you can say, Jeanine, how do you know that? I know it because he did all of it. Because inflation was, I think it was like 1.3 when he left, and during Biden, it went up to 9. You know, the borders were 1/4 the number of people coming through that are coming through now, and they were vetted. But right now, the borders are being overrun, and I don't know if you noticed it, but there is a huge caravan coming in across Mexico before the election. And if you watch the videos on Fox, Bill Maluzhin, who's a great reporter, it's all single men. And as it relates to crime, we got to get rid of this no bail nonsense. And in the end, she can't point to anything that she has done as vice president. Nothing. What a shame. She has reached the highest level of any woman in the United States government, and she blew it. She didn't do anything where she set herself up as a role model for young girls. She didn't use her prosecutorial instincts to say, we lost 300,000 kids during my administration. And I'm going to find those kids. I'm going to make sure they're not being trafficked. I'm going to make sure that these kids are not being used in child labor, which we know they are, according to the New York Times even. And I'm going to make sure that fentanyl doesn't come through. And I will make sure all the things that I was a prosecutor. She doesn't have an ounce of prosecutorial sense in her body. Otherwise, you would have seen this woman out there doing things that she says she'll do on day one. What an uncaring human being that she has to wait until we elect her to do anything for us. But it's going to be an exciting show. I've got Peter Navarro, who's going to talk about John Kelly, who came out and trashed Donald Trump. John Kelly, of course, is that 4-star Marine general who is basically saying that Donald Trump is a fascist. We're going to take care of John Kelly by talking to Peter Navarro. We're also going to be talking to Hogan Gidley, who's on the campaign trail right now with Trump, and what's going on the ground. So it's all coming up here in just a few moments on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. And, of course, never forget, that's a commitment we made on 9/11. Honor it by donating $11 a month to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation at t2t.org. That's T2T.org.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Judge Jeanine.
Hi, I'm Jeanine Pirro, and this is Protecting Your Future. The fact that everybody has higher tariffs than we do, and how we've got to make sure that it's reciprocal, so that if their tariffs are higher than ours, we either raise ours or they lower theirs if they want to do business. So this is Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Today, we're talking about making sure that American manufacturing continues to grow, and hopefully it will.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. With Cybersecurity Awareness Month winding down, LifeLock wants to remind you to update your software. These updates will patch up security issues that identity thieves can exploit to gain access to your personal info. For comprehensive identity theft protection, there's LifeLock. LifeLock alerts you to more uses of your personal info and fixes issues that arise. Protect your identity today with a 30-day free trial at lifelock.com/podcast.
This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Joining us now is the National Press Secretary for the 2020 campaign, Hogan Gidley. He's been on the show before. You know him. He doesn't mince words. I love him. So let's hit it, Hogan. Now, Kamala is closing the race by claiming not that she's wonderful, that she can do anything, or that she will do anything for you, but by saying that Donald Trump is a fascist and a Nazi. And right now, Hillary Clinton, the old lady, is coming back to claim that Donald Trump is going to have a fascist rally today, Sunday, at Madison Square Garden. I mean, how do you even answer these things? The Democrats have been saying forever, whether it's Goldwater, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, Bush, Romney, they're all fascist. I mean, where do they get this from?
Well, I'll tell you, there's an easy way to answer it. They know it's all BS. It's so simple to prove. Here's how you know she doesn't even believe the words that are coming out of her own mouth. We know this because if Democrats really felt that way, then why would several U.S. Senate candidates on the Democrat side be using Trump in their campaign ads?
That's right.
Or how could Chuck Schumer and other Democrats sit in a room, listen, and laugh at Trump's jokes at the Al Smith dinner?
Hey, Letitia James listened and laughed.
Yeah, of course. And Joe Biden even put on a MAGA hat at an event, just joking around recently. These are hardly the actions of people in a party who really believe that Trump is evil. But this dangerous rhetoric for purely political gain is a pattern for Kamala Harris. Because remember, as a candidate, she called Joe Biden a racist and a rapist on a debate stage after she had already asked Joe Biden to come out and do events for her in California, after she'd worked with Beau Biden, Joe's son, who died of brain cancer. So
in the hospital. When
she was asked about it on a late night talk show, she laughed that weird laugh and said it was a debate, as if that excuse completely exonerates her from using those horrible words. But it's an admission that she will do and say anything to gain political power and doesn't care who she hurts. And while she thinks this may gain her votes, I'm afraid it may get someone killed.
Well, especially, God forbid, the former president, where there have been 2 assassination attempts, one where he was actually hit. But, it's amazing that, they come out and say, it's the Republicans' rhetoric when it's Donald Trump who was shot. It's the Republicans who are fascist when they are taking down these attempted assassinations, and not only domestically, but by foreign countries. But I even have to correct myself, taking them down. I mean, what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was an outrage, given the fact that they weren't even able to protect the president. They didn't have communications, but I don't want to spend time on that. I want to spend time, Hogan Gidley, on how the end of this campaign, how is the president closing out? It's a tight race. What is the president doing? What is his message?
Well, we have been on the campaign trail on the Trump bus, while he's over doing big rallies. Some of the folks who worked for him in the past, some names you would know, are out kind of talking to the people, trying to get a gauge of this on the ground and just presenting the facts to the folks. I'll tell you, I've never seen this type of excitement, this type of enthusiasm. But what's interesting is this time, most of the people, when we asked the crowds of anywhere from 50 to 200 people, have you voted? They all raise their hands. And we ask them what they're doing with the last 2 weeks. And they say going to get their friends, going to get their family, going to get their colleagues, their coworkers, getting them to vote now. So it is a clear shift in strategy to flood the ballot box now and to keep the pressure on between now and Election Day so that, we don't suffer the fate of previous Republicans who wait all until Election Day and then can't make up all of the work that the Democrats had done in the early vote. And we also see, of course, that the Kamala Harris numbers are way down from Democrats in the past. The enthusiasm isn't there.
In terms of early voting, you mean? In
terms of early voting. And you see that in the numbers. And so, look, you cannot underestimate the Democrat ground game. Remember, Romney was ahead in a lot of polls right before the election, too. You have to keep the pressure on because we want this to be so overwhelmingly for Trump that it's obvious that people want a change. And so you have to keep doing this. But I'm telling you, I'm paid to be nervous, and I'm very nervous, okay? But I see a lot of good signs out there that I haven't seen before, and I'm encouraged when we're on the ground here talking to real people and real voters.
Well, you know what, Hogan Gidley, there's a lot to be nervous about. Whether you're talking about, the indoctrination of our kids in schools, the illegals coming through the border, the oil and gas industry in the United States. I could go through the whole thing. But I want to talk about Kamala for just a second and your take on her. I mean, this woman cannot answer a question. She was on CNN, and when she was asked a question, she just flips to Donald Trump is horrible. What have you done in the last 4 years? Well, it's really about Donald Trump in the last 10 years. It's almost, she's got Trump derangement syndrome. And this fascism thing is, on a day, I hear this rally today at the Garden is going to be incredible. And yet they are so clueless. They put up a candidate who cannot say what she's going to do. She cannot engage in a conversation.
Yeah, but they knew that. This is the thing. A year ago, reporters were writing stories that Joe Biden had a quote-unquote Kamala Harris problem, the most unpopular vice president in U.S. history. But, as you know, by their own definition, had they passed over Kamala Harris and gone to a primary system, then they would, by definition, their own definition, of course, be sexist and racist and bigoted. So they had to elevate Kamala Harris. What they were counting on was this. Remember, Kamala Harris usually comes out of the gate pretty strong. She did it in the presidential primary. She was right up the top there. When she called Joe Biden that segregationist from a debate stage, had T-shirts made, ready to go, and then fell on her face and never got a single vote. The same thing applies here. Democrats thought the condensed time frame would really allow them to kind of cover up a lot of Kamala's scars, a lot of her warts. And it just doesn't, because when they spend $1 billion and they get $1 billion of free positive TV advertising, loving on Kamala Harris, and she didn't run away with the thing, they realized they had to put her out on the trail in front of people in unscripted moments. But as you know, when you do that, the more people see her, the more they don't like her. And these answers that she gives, or non-answers, she can't give a good answer when the thing's scripted. She can't give a good answer when she's off the cuff because she's not good at this. Donald Trump went into a McDonald's, a billionaire businessman.
Oh, was that wonderful?
And it was beautiful. And the outcry
brilliant.
from the media wasn't because they were mocking him because they thought it failed. They were mocking him because they knew how successful it was.
It's iconic.
It's iconic. And Kamala Harris could have practiced for that, just like she did for those dinner parties she had to practice for with her staff for a year, and wouldn't have been able to accomplish what Donald Trump did in just an hour. I'm telling you, she's just not good at this. The Democrats knew that on the front end. Now, you can see a lot of the pundits on their side already starting to make excuses for her, which is a cause, for me to be a little more optimistic, because they wouldn't be saying these things trying to cut bait now if they really thought she was going to run away with this. At the same time, as I said, caution everyone, you still have to go vote and do the work.
My theory is a little different. I mean, you say that, they knew that she wasn't that capable. And by the way, she didn't get one vote to be the vice president, and she certainly didn't get one vote to be the president. I mean, Lord, if I could have done that, I mean, at least I would have been able to get in there and start fighting for, for closing the border, finding the 300,000 children that she lost, making sure that there is no sex trafficking, human trafficking. As a prosecutor, that's what you do. She doesn't have a prosecutorial instinct in her body. But my take on this condensed time frame and, they would be able to cover up how bad she was. The truth was that Donald Trump was supposed to be in jail or dead. And we were never supposed to know how bad Kamala Harris was. That was the game plan. He wasn't supposed to make it. And he was supposed to be jailed. And that's what they were planning on, and it just didn't work that way. It was divine intervention at that Butler rally. And I'm not an overly religious person. I'm religious, but certainly not overly religious. And there is a reason that he's running, and there is a reason that he's survived as long as he has. All right, up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I will be speaking with Peter Navarro. Peter was with the Trump administration. He was the manufacturing czar and first deputy assistant to the president. It's all coming up right here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Joining me this morning is Peter Navarro. Peter is an economist who served in the Trump administration, first as deputy assistant to the president and director of the National Trade Council, but he was basically the manufacturing czar, also chief China hawk. Peter doesn't fool around when it comes to China. He's written more books than I can read. And in fact, every book is thicker than all of the books that I've written together. And I've written 9 books, Peter. I think your one book on China is bigger than all of mine. But anyway, it is great to have you on the show, Peter. I have long been a fan of yours, and I have watched as the Biden administration tried to take you apart. But like everyone who worked for Donald Trump, you're tough as nails, and we are thrilled to have you back. So let's talk about a couple of things. You were in the White House. You were there during the Trump administration, and you have just written an article, and I am reading it. It's about Trump's four-star bully chief of staff, John Kelly, was a traitor within the media. And it's was a traitor, period. Blaze.com, if you want to read it. Talk to me about John Kelly, who has used every opportunity in the last couple days to claim that Donald Trump is a fascist. I don't know, did he call him Hitler? I mean, it's the same playbook. But talk about this four-star general that the president brought in and who's done nothing but trash him to the American people.
Well, it makes me angry to see him playing court jester to the New York Times King of Spin a couple of days before the election. I mean, that's just one more election interference. Now, here's the thing. John Feckless Kelly, I spent over 500 days with this SOB, and he was a coward, a bully, and a traitor to this country. Everybody needs to know it. And the first indictment, the most important indictment, Judge, he's a four-star general.
Yep.
Every four-star general to every buck private knows the most important principle in the military is what? Chain of command. That son of a bitch, Kelly, refused repeatedly to obey the direct orders of his commander-in-chief, Donald John Trump. I saw this repeatedly in the White House, in the Oval Office. And what Kelly would do is he would receive a direct order. Go get the steel and aluminum tariffs ready, John. Go get the China tariffs ready, John. Go get the Buy American, Hire American order. And John Kelly would say, sir, yes, sir, like the dog he is. He'd walk out the door and make sure that stuff was delayed or scuttled.
Why? Why, Peter Navarro? Why?
Yeah, well, here's the reason. And there are a couple of them. When he first got there, he made a choice between the factions in the White House. There were the folks who were loyal to Trump and his agenda, folks like me, folks like Lighthizer, and then there were the other ones, the Gary Cohns of this world, the Steve Mnuchins of this world, who did everything he could to subvert the agenda. He threw his lot in with them. But from his mind, here's what was so interesting to me. And Mattis had the same disease. Old Mad Dog Mattis, who was the defense secretary, another four-star general. They thought that we shouldn't be going out and putting pressure on allies like South Korea or Japan or Europe or whatever, because they didn't want to disturb their military alliances. And they didn't understand that if we didn't clean up our trade act with those countries, Korea was killing us. They were killing our pickup truck and auto industry. If we didn't clean that up, we wouldn't have a defense industrial base. But at the end of the day, Judge, it doesn't friggin' matter why he did it. It's the fact that he did it, and as a four-star general knew that he shouldn't do it. It was the ultimate betrayal of the president and this country. And when that son of a bitch goes out and tells the world that Donald Trump is a bad person, I mean, that's like just wrong. And this fascism stuff, I'm the guy who went to prison for defending the Constitution, John Kelly. And that's what the other side does. We don't do that. Yeah. We support the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the third, fourth, fifth, and all the way up. And that's, I mean, the other thing with John Kelly that needs to be aired here is one of the most scurrilous things he did was he let this guy, Rob Porter, the staff secretary, this guy could not get a high-level security clearance because there was allegations.
I remember Rob Porter. Rob Porter. This was early on. There were the claims that he beat a girlfriend or that two
wives.
Ooh,
2 wives.
Yeah. Okay.
And they had pictures and everything like that. I mean, right. I don't want to try Rob Porter on this show, but the fact of the matter is there were these allegations with credible evidence that were hidden from the president and the public. And Porter, see, here's the thing. Porter was one of the rhinos. I mean, he was no friend of the Trump trade agenda, to be clear.
And by the way, just to make a point, Peter, just to make a point, none of the Bushes have come out for President Trump. I mean, while you've got the Democrats lined up, the half-dead ones, but go ahead.
I mean, look, Porter was he's straight out of the Republican version of GQ, man. He looked. Yeah, I
remember. He's good looking. Yep.
I mean, but he had these dark secrets, and I saw his temper once when I was in his office and he slammed. I mean, it was he went from 0 to 60 in a second. So I've seen that side of his temper. But the point is not to talk about him. So much as the fact that the staff secretary, it's actually one of the most important positions that you've never heard of in the West Wing. Because this is the guy who takes every document the president signs to him. And so the staff secretary sees the highest security clearance, everything. This guy didn't have a security clearance. And Kelly hid that. He hid that. And when it came out, it was very embarrassing to the president. And it wasn't good for this country. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I mean, it's like.
Why? But why would he do that? I mean, you've got the commander in chief. You've got someone who is holding his, most precious documents, and Kelly is trying to cover up for him. But at some point it broke. That's why I remember this story. And I take no position. I don't know anything about Rob Porter other than he lost his job. So, but Kelly knew that he didn't have that clearance.
Was aware of it and hid it. And look, the guy, when he came in, he was not prepared for the job. I mean, one of the things you have to do is be good with the media.
Let's talk about John Kelly. Why does he have this problem? He is a 4-star general, Marine, and it's unusual for a Marine. But it's treasonous to refuse to obey the orders of the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
And what orders? I mean, when the president told him to do things, he just wouldn't do them?
Worse, he wouldn't only not do them, he'd actually work to hide documents so it couldn't get done. And the other thing he used, it was his typical bureaucratic technique in Washington, the way the swamp gets you. He would revert to this thing called the PCC process, right? So the boss would say, here, do this, okay? If he had told me to do it, I could have had it done by the end of the day with it.
Yeah, well, you're like
he tells Kelly to do it. The next thing you know, it's 3 weeks where the stuff's got to go throughout the bureaucracy, the low-level bureaucrats, work its way back up the chain, and by the time it gets back there, it's he did that repeatedly. So why was he doing it? Look, these rhinos, these people, they just don't believe in the agenda. Now, 4 years later now, we're a long ways. People understand that things like tariffs are important protections. When Trump put them on, it protected American workers. There was no inflation, and they worked, and it's fine. But back in the days, I mean, I was me and Lighthizer, and the boss, we were the only people in there who really supported the Trump agenda. I mean, it was extraordinary, Jeanine. I mean,
that is shocking. That really is. But you know what I want to get to? What does he gain by trashing the president? What does he get out of that?
Look, there were so many people who tried to get around the president who weren't elected, who thought that they were doing the best thing for whoever, like Gary Cohn. He comes in as the National Economic Council director, right? He's representing Wall Street's interest. He knew that if he went there and blocked the president's trade agenda, he could go back to Wall Street and all his buddies would pat him on the back and say, hell of a job, Gary. So that's what these people, I mean, they think somehow they're more important than the people who elected the president and the president himself. It's a disease. And I just see it time and time again, and they justify it in their own mind on the grounds. Gary Cohn didn't do this. Gary was, he was just trying to make money. But Kelly thinks he was doing the honorable thing when he was doing the treasonous thing.
I got you. Let's talk just for a moment. Let's talk for a moment. A couple of minutes we have left.
Sure.
The Trade Act and the tariffs. There's a lot of discussion today about tariffs and whether or not they're a good thing or a bad thing. How about you just tell us in a few sentences and relegate it to like a third grader at this point for me, not my listener. Talk to me about tariffs. Why is that? Why
was John Kelly listening? Is that what you?
No.
Okay. Look, tariffs. They are the most important defense against countries that use unfair trade practices. Okay, they are the leveler of the playing field for American workers. So if China itself puts on 40% tariffs on our autos and subsidizes their auto industry, there's no way we can compete unless we countervail with tariffs. Okay, so that's number one. It's like everybody else around the world has higher tariffs than we do. And if we don't match those, then our workers lose jobs as our factories go offshore. That's number one. Number two, there's actually a very interesting theory and data in economics which shows that big countries like the United States with big markets can use tariffs actually to keep inflation down. How does that work? It's like you put the tariffs on, and a country like Communist China, which is heavily reliant on this market, faces a choice. It can either not sell as much to us or it can lower its prices. What's it do? It lowers its prices. So tariffs are just a great thing. We had a thing that really the boss wants this done early, and maybe we can get Congress to do it because it's sensible. Reciprocal Trade Act, right? He did it in his 2019 State of the Union speech, right? It simply says that if a country has higher tariffs than the United States, we give them a choice. Either they lower their tariffs to ours or we raise ours to theirs.
Yep.
Now, how sensible is that?
That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it's called equality. It's like
I hit my mark on that.
Yep. Well, we do higher. Okay.
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of people who are saying tariffs are the reason inflation's so high. And I kind of sit there and I say to myself, Jeanine, you were never good in economics. But one last question. I have to tell you.
4 years of tariffs and we didn't have inflation. So.
Yeah, well, you know what?
There you go. The inflation's Kamala Harris is overspending. She was the tie-breaking vote on the two biggest budget-busting hills in American.
By the way, Peter Navarro, you know you haven't changed. You know you haven't changed since you were in the White House. You just keep going. I love it. I love your energy. I love the fact that you were so that they couldn't beat you down, Peter. They didn't beat you down. What did you go to jail for?
Defending the constitutional separation of powers. I mean, look, it's like they got a subpoena from the Kangaroo Witch Hunt Committee at J6, right?
Yes, okay.
That's the legislative branch. The legislative branch, going back to the days of George Washington and the executive doctrine, privilege doctrine, cannot subpoena a president or his top advisors.
Yeah.
Full stop. And that's been supported by the Department of Justice for decades across party lines, okay? Yep. I was the first person ever to be charged with that in the White House and ever to go to prison. And if Hunter Biden gets a subpoena, he damn well should testify. Why? What's the difference? Because he doesn't have the protection of executive privilege. He wasn't talking to the president about things. Yeah. He was out talking to hookers and cocaine dealers.
And collecting money for the big guy.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly.
Peter Navarro.
So I took one for the team.
Yeah.
The case will go to the Supreme Court, and if I win, I will have successfully defended the Constitution, and that's why I took the bullet for the team.
All right, Peter Navarro. It's great to have you on the show and to give us some insight.
By the way, on the 5, and I love this moonlighting you do, because I'm a big fan of Johnny and Rita and WABC.
Yes, they're great people. Anyway, Peter Navarro, great to hook up with you again.
All right.
And listen, we've only got 7 or 8 days, 9 days at Sunday.
But it's going to seem like a lifetime and go by in a blink of an eye.
Yes, it will. Peter Navarro, thanks so much for being with us. All right. And folks, never forget, that's the promise we made on 9/11. Join the Tunnel to Towers Foundation on its mission to do good in honor of America's heroes. Donate $11 a month at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
This is the Judge Jeanine Show. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Okay, now it's time for me to gavel out with my closing argument. Well, you heard from 2 people today, very close to the campaign. Both worked in the White House. Peter Navarro, who was in charge of trade, and a first deputy assistant to the president, along with Hogan Gidley, who worked in the press office. I think he was deputy press secretary, and right now is the national press secretary for the 2020 election. Things on the ground are looking pretty good, but it's still a tight election, folks. The lines are drawn. It's very simple. You've got Kamala Harris, who cannot even articulate whether we're better off now than we were 4 years ago. Don't rely on me. Just pull up her quotes when she was interviewed at the CNN town hall this past week. She is unable to answer serious questions. She is not a serious candidate. She is in this position as a result of her connections, having nothing to do with one vote, not even one vote for her for vice president or for president. She was just moved into these positions. And you've got Donald Trump, who's out there at McDonald's. He's out there talking to the Nelk boys. He is talking to young people. He is engaging with everyone. And, you know, the guys blame the Dems for saying that, that their behavior is toxic. The Democrats started all this toxic masculinity. No, men are men. Men should be men, and it's not for us to say how they should act. And so I think Americans are tired of this apologizing for your white privilege and patriarchy. Check your privilege, check your pronouns. That's not where we want to be in this country. We want to be in a place where we're safe, our family's safe, the border's closed. We're no longer nothing more than a landing spot for people who come here from gangs that are taking over buildings and killing young girls and mothers. It is time to take America back, and the only way to do that is to vote for Donald Trump. All right. I can't believe we're out of time. Make sure you join us right back here next week, same time, same place, for the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Have a great day, everyone.